HaKadosh, Erev Tov, Masechet Ketubot Daf Amud Aleph 25a1. Says the Gemara, yeah, Ve'ela, my Gedolah Chazaka. If you remember, we went and we said that there was a Gedolah Chazaka. The reason to be matir, right now, to eat Truma in Eretz Yisrael was because they used to come and they used to eat Truma Gedolah also in the Golah, in the diaspora. Right? Why? Because we weren't going to bring them up to Yuchasin. I mean, the fact that they ate Truma doesn't mean now that they're going to become full-fledged Kohanim. So therefore, they could still continue eating Truma, but we're not going to make them into Kohanim, full-fledged Kohanim. Okay? But now, says the Gemara, my Gedolah Chazaka. Rabbi Yosef came and he said, Gedolah Chazaka. Look how great is the Chazaka. What does this mean exactly? Gedolah Chazaka, that we come and we say that look how strong is the Chazaka. So he says, Meikara achul bitruma d'Rabbanan. At the beginning, they were eating Truma. But which Truma? Truma only d'Rabbanan, because it was outside of Eretz Yisrael. Hashta, now that they came inside of Eretz Yisrael, remember, they came up with Ezra Sofer. Ezra Sofer, after the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, they were in 70 years in exile, in Babel. When they finished the 70 years of exile, they came up with Ezra Sofer. When they came up with Ezra Sofer, some of them, they didn't have their lineages properly done. That means they weren't able to prove it. So what happened? He went and he said, if you guys ate Truma in Chutz Haaretz, meaning in Babel, you could eat Truma here. So what is Gedolah Chazaka? Gedolah Chazaka is that even though there you guys were eating Truma d'Rabbanan because it was outside of the land of Israel, and now you're coming into Israel, now it's going to be Truma d'Oraita. You're still allowed to continue eating. That's what it means. Gedolah Chazaka. Look how great is the Chazaka. Okay? Or if you want, you could answer. Hashtanami, here also in Eretz Yisrael with Truma d'Rabbanan achul. They were only eating Truma d'Rabbanan, right? But Truma d'Oraita lo achul, so they cannot continue eating, meaning they do not go up to eat now Truma d'Oraita. But when do we bring up from Truma to Yuchasin? Only with Truma d'Oraita. With Truma d'Rabbanan lo maskina. So Truma d'Rabbanan you do not bring up, which means like this. The beginning of the Havamin of the Gemara was, we know that this family came up, and we weren't 100% sure were they still Kohanim or not. So what happened? We went and they said, listen, for Yuchasin, for genealogy, lineage, it's a ma'ala subi Yuchasin. It's very, very powerful. No. That we're not going to let you. But Truma, you could continue eating Truma. Okay. Chazak u'baruch. Very, very good. The beginning, we thought that they were eating Truma d'Rabbanan over there in Babel. They come to Eretz Yisrael, they're eating Truma d'Oraita. Said, and that's why it's a Chazaka Gedolah. It's a very strong Chazaka that you're actually bringing them up. Because now they're eating Truma d'Oraita, and only Truma d'Rabbanan. Now, the second answer of the Gemara, is no. What did they eat in Chutz Haaretz? Truma d'Rabbanan. Also here in Israel, they could only eat Truma d'Rabbanan. They cannot eat Truma d'Oraita. So now the Gemara is going to ask, and therefore what? We do not. When do we bring up from Truma to Yuchasin? Only Truma d'Oraita. If it's Truma d'Rabbanan, you do not bring up from Truma to Yuchasin. Everyone understands what I'm talking about, no? When we say Truma to Yuchasin. Meaning that if he's eating Truma, right? So one more time. When we say the first shita is that they were eating Truma d'Rabbanan because it's outside of Israel. They came to Israel, now they're starting to eat Truma d'Oraita. And that's a chidush, Gedolah Chazaka. They had such a Chazaka that since they were eating Truma d'Rabbanan in the Chutz Haaretz, in the diaspora, they could continue eating Truma d'Oraita in Israel. The second answer is no. Really, they were eating Truma d'Rabbanan outside of Israel. When they come to Israel, they could only also eat Truma d'Rabbanan. Now, when is it the general rule that you could bring up from Truma to Yuchasin? Meaning that you could bring a proof that if this Kohen is eating Truma, he's already Yuchas. He's got good genealogy. That's only Truma d'Oraita, not Truma d'Rabbanan. Truma d'Rabbanan, we do not bring you up. Right? That means if I come and I see you eating Truma, I'm not going to say you're a Kohen because you're only eating Truma d'Rabbanan. Only if you're eating Truma d'Oraita do I allow you to bring you up to d'Oraita. Right? So therefore, that's when you're going to bring it up. So now the question is, according to this, so what is Gedolah Chazaka then? What does it mean that he had such a strong chazaka? Ve'ela mai gedolah chazaka, de'afal gav de'ika lemigzar mishum truma d'oraita lo gazira. It's such a strong chazaka that we don't make a gezerah, which means like this. Usually, in such a circumstance, I would make a gezerah. I would say, Ribono Shalom, look how easy it is to fall in the pit. Right? Why? Here you have a Kohen. He's allowed to eat Truma d'Rabbanan, but he's not allowed to eat Truma d'Oraita. He could fall. Somebody could come, give him a piece of bread, give him something, and then he's a Kohen. He's eating Truma. But 1 second, he's only eating Truma d'Rabbanan. And then he could eat Truma d'Oraita, and it's a problem. And then you could also bring him up to genealogy. So because of that, I would have thought to say that we make a gezerah. If he cannot eat Truma d'Oraita, he cannot eat also Truma d'Rabbanan. Kamashmalan, Gedolah Chazaka, then no. we don't make that gezerah. You're allowed to eat truma d'Rabbanan, and you're not going to eat truma d'oraita. So says the Gemara, ubi truma d'oraita lo achul. According to this explanation, remember, the Kohanim cannot eat truma d'oraita, but they could eat truma d'Rabbanan. Ubi truma d'oraita they can't eat, lo achul. V'aktiv, it's written there in Ezra, asher lo yuchlu mi kodesh hakodashim. They cannot eat from kodesh hakodashim, davka kodesh hakodashim. What is kodesh hakodashim? Kodshei HaMizbeach. If you guys remember when we were learning, whether it was in Chagigah, whether it was in all the other Masechtot, there's different levels of Tumah v'Tahara. If you remember, Kodesh was the highest level. What is a Kodesh? Kodesh is the Mizbeach. All the sacrifices that come in the Mizbeach. After that comes Truma. So remember, by Kodesh, you could even become a Revi'i for Truma. By Truma, you could become even a Shlishi from Truma. Remember that we said a Chulin can never become after a Sheni. You remember there was a Rishon and Sheni, but only, right? So therefore, what happens now is that here, when it says in the Pasuk, they cannot eat from Kodesh Kodashim is mashma, they cannot eat from the sacrifices. But Truma, they can eat. Which Truma? Any type of Truma. Even Truma Doraita. Says the Gemara, no, you misunderstood the Pasuk. Haki Kamar, this is what it means to say. Lo b'mide di ikre Kodesh. You cannot eat anything which is called Kodesh. Tichtiv, as it says in the Pasuk in Vayikra, v'chal zar lo yochal Kodesh. Any zar cannot eat Kodesh. Any stranger cannot eat Kodesh. What are we referring to? Truma. V'lo b'mide di ikre Kodashim. And not in anything which is called Kodashim. So we're splitting words. It doesn't mean Asher lo yochlu mi Kodesh HaKodashim. It's one word referring to the Mizbeach. No. Asher lo yochlu mi Kodesh. Kodesh is Truma. HaKodashim. What is called Kodashim? The sacrifices. Tichtiv ubat kohen ki tiye li zar hi bitrumat HaKodashim lo tochel. What is the Trumat HaKodashim? Those are the matanot which are separated from the Kodashim, from the Korban Shlamim and all these things, which is the Chazeh and the Shok and the other presents that are given to a Kohen. Remember that the Kohen, he gets the Shok, the Chazeh, right? And the Lechayim. Where do we learn that from? Where do you get it from? We learned in a Braita. So therefore, what do we just say? We just said when it says she's not allowed to eat from the Menorah Kodashim. So basically, what we're doing here is we're splitting it up. Kodesh refers to the Truma. Kodashim is referring to the Mizbeach. Tashema, we're going to try now to bring a Braita to do it. Or are we going to be Ma'alim? Are we going to bring up from Nisiyat Kapayim to Yuchasin or not? Chazaka lekiuna, right? The Chazaka for the Kiuna is Nisiyat Kapayim beBavel. When they came and they used to see somebody doing the Nisiyat Kapayim in Bavel, it was a chazakah for keuna. V'achilat chala beSuria. If they eat chala in Syria, Aram Tzova, that was the chazakah that he was a kohen. Because again, in Frashat chala, nowadays nobody eats Frashat chala, but we don't know exactly who's the kohen or not. Chiluk matanot bekrachim. When they give out the matanot keuna, that's in the big cities. That's a proof that he's a kohen or not. Tani mihat. However, though we came and we learned, my love, Liyuchasin, are we not talking about, right? Are we not talking about for Nisiyat Kapayim and you're going up for Yuchasin? Says the Gemara, no, we're talking about Truma. Yeah, we're talking about Truma. Yeah, Truma. What does that mean? We're not talking about for Yuchasin, meaning we bring up from Nisiyat Kapayim to not Yuchasin, but to Truma. So says the Gemara, but I thought we were talking about that it's going to be compared to achilat chala. You're eating chala. Just like eating chala, you go up to Yuchasin. So to Birkat Kohanim, Nisiyat Kapayim, you go up to Yuchasin. Says the Gemara, no. Achilat gufa, chala gufa letruma. Achilat chala only helps you for truma, but not for Yuchasin. Meaning if you eat chala, you're allowed to eat truma. You're not allowed to do Yuchasin. Kasavar chala bizman hazeh d'Rabbanan, because he holds the chala nowadays is only d'Rabbanan and it's not d'Oraita. But Truma in Eretz Yisrael is going to be Doraita, which means there's a big machloket. Is Chala nowadays Doraita or Dorabanan? So that's what we're saying over here. He holds that Chala Bizman Hazeh is Dorabanan, but Truma Bizman Hazeh is going to be Doraita if it's going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Maskinan mi Chala Dorabanan Truma Doraita. So he says, so therefore the chidush is that we're going to bring you up from Chala Dorabanan to Truma Doraita. And just like it's exact, this is going to be the exact opposite of what we just said of the Shitav Rabbanan. Okay, this is the Shita Rabbeinu B'Yeshua that he said the opposite of the Rabbanan that we just mentioned before. Because basically we just said that the rabbi said that even if the chiyuv of Truma Bizman Hazeh is only the Rabbanan, since chala is min doraita, so therefore it's going to be okay. And Rav Huna Bar Yeshua just said the exact opposite is that even if the obligation is going to be truma bizman and says doraita, and the chala is only going to be drabanan, still it's going to be the same way. So basically, there's going to be a machloka whether truma is doraita or drabanan, and also it's chala doraita or drabanan. Next, tashema chazaka lekiuna. How do we have a chazaka for kiuna? Nesiat kapayim, birkat kohanim. Vechiluk granot beretz Yisrael. Or when you're going to be dividing, right? The chiluk granot. Chiluk granot is the granaries in Eretz Yisrael. Uvesuria, uvechol makom, and in Syria, and in any single place, sheshluchei Rosh Chodesh magiin, that the shliachs of Rosh Chodesh are going to come. Nesiat kapayim raya. Nesiat kapayim is a proof that what that he's a kohen. Aval lo lechiluk granot, but not on edut of chiluk granot. Ubevavel kesuria. Bavel is like Syria, right? That means Bavel is like Syria. Okay, Rabban Shimon Lelomer Shimon says, Af Alexandria Shemitzrayim, Parishona, also in Alexandria of Mitzrayim in the beginning, right? Because Bedin was actually going to be Kavua there. So therefore, basically, what we're trying to come out and saying is where and when are different chazakot made? Meaning in different countries and in different places, there's going to be different chazakot. Ktani Mihat, we did learn though, Nesiat Kapayim, my lovely Yuchasin. The Nesiat Kapayim is not talking about also Yuchasin. So says the Gemara, no, we're talking about Chala. So says the Gemara, Hadumya dechilu granot sani. I thought that that's going to be the exact same like what? Like granot, right? Machilu granot yuchasin. So to Nesiat Kapayim yuchasin, just like when you're dividing things in the granary, right? It's for yuchasin. So to it's the same thing. It's going to be for yuchasin. So says the Gemara, no. What are we talking about? Right? He comes and he says, right? Chiluk granot gufa is lechala. The chiluk granot is only helping you for chala. Kasavar, but he holds truma bizman hazeh is drabanan. Truma nowadays is the drabanan, right? The chala is deoraita. Yeah, you guys with me? One more time. Yeah, it's going to be deoraita. Maskina mitruma drabanan lechala deoraita. So therefore, we bring up from truma drabanan to chala deoraita, just like we found. Man, just like we found by Rav Huna Bar Yeshua l'Rabbanan. That's what we just said before as well. The Amar Rav Huna Bar Yeshua, but it says Rav Huna Bar Yeshua, Ashkachetinu l'Rabbanan be'Rav Diyat ve'Kamli. We found the rabbis that they were coming and sitting and saying, Afilu l'Mandamar, even according to the Mandamar that says Truma b'Zman hazeh d'Rabbanan, the Truma is d'Rabbanan. Ve'Chala d'Oraita, Chala is d'Oraita. Sharei Sheva shekibshu ve'Sheva shechliku nitchayvu be'Chala. We know that it took 14 years for Yoshua bin Nun to capture Eretz Yisrael, but it wasn't really full capture. It was 7 years to capture, to conquer, and 7 years for the division. So it took 14 years, right? 7 years to conquer Eretz Yisrael, and 7 years to divide Eretz Yisrael. But during those 14 years, they were still obligated in Chala, because when it says in the Pasuk in Shelach, Mevoachem el haaretz, right? When it says, it doesn't say there, Ki tavo or Ki viecha. It says Mevoachem el haaretz. So they made a diyuk that even once Bnei Yisrael come in, they're immediately chayav in Chala, even though they didn't finish the conquest and they didn't finish the division. But they weren't obligated in Truma. Why? Because there by Truma, it says, it's only when it's yours, which means after it's already they conquered and they already divided it. So we said, the opposite. Even according to the Mandamar, the Truma bizman hazeh d'Oraita, and Chala is the Rabbanan, it's going to be the same halacha. The Tanya was again, one more time. Let's zoom out. There's a machloket, is Truma bizman hazeh d'Oraita or the Rabbanan, and there's a machloket whether Chala is d'Oraita or the Rabbanan. And both of them is a machloket, right? Because basically, Rav Huna Bar Yeshua, right, he heard that they were coming and they were saying, right, what's the halacha exactly? So therefore, the rabbis actually were saying, whether we're saying that Truma bizman hazeh d'Rabbanan, Chala is d'Oraita, or the opposite way around. Right? What is the opposite way around? I answer them. Who's this? This is Rav Huna Bar Yeshua, not like the Rabbanan. The opposite. That even according to the Mandamar, the Truma is the Raita and Chala is the Rabbanan. The Tanya was when he says in the pasuk Bevoachem el haaretz, Bevoachem. If it's only written when you come to the land, Yachol mishlech nisu lecha shnayim usher meraglim. What about when the meraglim came in? How many meraglim came in to spy the land of Israel? No, but that was the first time around. The second time around with Yoshua. 2.
רגע, שאם זאת הצילה אותם, רחב הזונה.
רחב הזונה, who was it?
כלב.
כלב and? פנחס. 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 גמרא. If it's good, I would have thought to say when 2 or 3 meraglim come in, then you would have already been obligated in a Parshat Chala. Tamulomar kam sichu bevoachem. What does it mean bevoachem? Beviat kulchem, when you all come into the land of Israel. Velo beviat mikzachem, and not when a few of them come in. So therefore he comes and he says, bevoachem does not come and teach you that you're obligated, right, in Afrashat Chala, only when it's going, even if you didn't conquer it, the opposite. Bevoachem comes to teach you that everybody has to come into Israel in order to be considered that you are obligated in Afrashat Chala, but no one, just the 2 or 3 people come in, and that's it. So says the Gemara, when Ezra Sofer came up with the Olim, right, when everyone came up, right, so he comes and he says, when Ezra came up, Lav Kulu Salit, not everybody went up. The majority of Israel, they stayed in the Gola. Yeah, just like it says over there. Did you guys know that? The majority of Israel stayed in the diaspora. They didn't come back up to Israel during the second Mikdash. And during the second Mikdash, and that's what you have, by the way, that they spoke about, that people went, there were Jews already in Morocco from already Galut Beit Rishon. Morocco, see, all these different, Babel, they were already from Beit Rishon. The majority of Israel did not come up. That's what it says here. Majority of Eretz Yisrael, majority of Jews, they stayed outside of Israel. They did not come back up to Israel. Okay? So Tashema, Kafei Amud Bet, 25b. Says the Gemara, Tashema, Chazaka lekeuna, Nesiut kapayim vechilut granot ve'edut. So says the Gemara, we learn in a Braita that how do you want to know who's a Kohen? Take the Chazaka for the keuna, right? How's the Chazaka for the keuna? Nesiut kapayim, if it does become Kohanim. Or chiluk granot, or if they divide the trumot, right, and the chalukah and the granot, they give it to him. Ve'edut, and edut that he's a kohen, because if there's edut that he's a kohen, so therefore that she's also that the mother was kshera lekuna, so obviously he's going to be kosher. So says the Gemara, ve'edut chazakai. He says 1 second, but we know that edut, that he's like a kohen, that's a chazakah. That's already a chazakah then, right? It's not that edut is a uchacha gemura that it's true. What is edut? I know that he's been a kohen. Why? But I remember he's always been a kohen. That's not. This is what I mean to say. Nesiat kapayim is like edut. Just like edut is liuchasin, so to nesiat kapayim is liuchasin. So therefore, this is a proof that from nesiat kapayim you bring up to liuchasin. Says the Gemara, no. Leedut haba mikoach chazaka kachazaka. When you have edut coming from the koach of a chazaka, so then that is like a chazaka in itself. It's keilu we saw it with our eyes, and therefore we're going to give him, right, this edut. Right, that's what we're saying over here. It's not that they testified about the fathers that they were Kohanim, right? Because then for sure it says the Kohen. Here the chidush of the Braita is that not like when we come and we're seeing it, right? That we're seeing the chazakah, but rather even if it's just like a edut on a chazakah, it's like a chazakah. Okay. Yeah, we're further on. But somebody that came in front of Rabbi Yami. Elmaleh, and he came and he said on somebody else, I have a chazakah that he's a Kohen. Elmaleh, he says, Maraita, what did you see that he's a Kohen? Elmaleh, he says, Shekara Rishon Bet HaKnesset. They called him first in the Bet HaKnesset, Bechizkat Shu Kohen, or Bechizkat Shu Gadol. Right? He comes and he says, 1 second, that he Kara Rishon. He says, what? Bechizkat Shu Kohen, maybe it's Gadol. What does that mean? Sometimes, just because somebody will read first, maybe it's a Gadol. Right? Like a Tamid Chacham or that, sometimes they'll call him up as first. So he says, no, Shekara Charav Levi. If they call up a Levi after the first person, it's a Raya, the first person is a Kohen. That's why it's actually a problem. If you call the Israel as a Rishon, you're not allowed to call up a Levi as Levi, because then what you do is that you just made the Rishon is that a Kohen. So it's a problem. The Lau Rabbi, of course, everyone's makbid on this, right? Also by us, but we could call up a Levi as a Rishon, and we say that on Pishu Levi. So Rabbi Yami came and he put him up. He put him up as a Kohen. How that Levi says that there was somebody that came in front of Rishon Levi. Elmaleh, he says, Levi. I know that he's a Levi. He's a Levi. Elmaleh, Maraita, what did you see? Elmaleh, he says, he called him second. Bechizkat Shu Levi or Bechizkat Shu Adam Gadol. It was because of Levi or Adam Gadol. So no, Shekara Lefanav Kohen. The Kohen read in front of him, meaning the first Aliyah was a Kohen. If the first Aliyah is a Kohen, the second one has to be a Levi. If it's not a Levi, Keravim Kom Levi, he does the same Aliyah. So therefore, right, Rabbi Yoshua Levi, right, Leviah Alpi. So he brought him up as Leviah as his mouth. Somebody came in front of Resh Lakish. Right, and he told him, Muchsekani Bazeshu Kohen. I know that he's a Kohen. Elmaleh, he says, how do you know he's a Kohen? Elmaleh, he came first in Bet HaKnesset. Elmaleh, he says, He says, I saw that he started getting on the granot on the granaries. Amalo Rabbi Elazar says, he says what? If there's no granot, so then what? There's not going to be any type of kiuna. Which means like this: the fact that you went and you said, right, that he read first in the Bet Knesset and you didn't like that as a proof. You wanted granot. I don't understand. If there's no goren, right? If there's no goren, which is the granaries, which they come and they collect the money. They collect the Trumot Masro from the goren, right? So he says, Batla kiuna, what? There's no kiuna. Meaning, if there's no granaries, nobody comes and they get Trumot Masro from the places where they gather the storage houses. What? There's no kiuna? Well, obviously, there's still kiuna. Zimni Nabu Yatve was once they were sitting in front of Rabbi Yochanan. There was a story that came in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Again, they testified that he read Rishon in the Bet Knesset. Elmaleh Shakish says Shakish, Reitiv shechilek al goren. What did you see that they got in the granary? Elmaleh Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, "Bimensham goren batal kiuna." What if there's no granaries? So now what? There's no kiuna anymore. Yeah, what? The most important thing is going to be the kiuna. What's going on? So he says, Hadal Chazil Rabbi Elazar bishut. Then afterwards he went and he saw the Shakish went and he saw Rabbi Elazar, right? Bishut. What does that mean? He understood that Rabbi Elazar, right? He already heard this from Rabbi Yochanan, his rabbi. So the Shakish was upset that why is it that he didn't quote his rabbi? Meaning, if you already heard this from your Rebbe, why are you coming and you're saying it to your friend and you're not saying it in the name of your Rebbe? So Amari went and he said, Shamat mili devar nafcha v'lo amarta lemishle. He went and he said, I don't understand you. You heard words from Bar Nafcha. Rabbi Yochanan, his nickname was Bar Nafcha, right? Because his father was Napach. He was a Choresh Barzel, right? So therefore he comes and he says, we know this a few times. So he says, so because of that, you heard things in the name of Bar Nafcha and you didn't say it in his name. What were you doing? Should have said in his name. Rabbi and Rabbi Chia. One of them said, right, Hechal piv, right, aviv lekuna. One of them Hela achal pi achiv lelevia. Do you know that it once also happened that once we had a dut about a person's father, right? So then Hela ben al pi aviv, meaning once we found out that the father was a Kohen, we said that the son was also a Kohen. And it once happened that we brought a brother to another brother because of the Leviyah, which means we didn't have the testimony on this brother, or we didn't have a testimony on the son. But the second that we had the testimony on the father or on the brother, so we also applied the same testimony to the other one. So Tistayem the Rebbe Ela ben al pi aviv lekuna. So it's a proof that Rebbe brought a son to the father to the kuna. The time was we went to the Raita. Imagine a father comes and he says, "This is my son and he's a Kohen." Ne'eman, he's going to be believed to give him to eat truma. But he's not believed for yuchasin. Again, one more time. Truma, yes. Yuchasin, no. These are the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Chia says, if you're already believing him to eat truma, so believe him also to make married to a woman. But if you don't believe him to isha, so don't believe him to do truma. Amalo, he says, no, I'm going to believe him because he could give him to eat truma, which means he could always give his children to eat truma. And ever since it's biado to do it, meaning he's got the possibility to do so, we believe him that this is his son, and his son is actually a Kohen. But not to do with a woman, because he does not have rights to do with genealogy and lineage. So that has to do with the lineage. Maybe Bemet is not really believed, so we're not going to believe him. So Tistayem. So therefore, it's true that Rebbe was the one that he brought up a child to the father to kiuna because of him. So now that I know that already Rebbe was the one that brought up the son to the father for kiuna, we know that it was Rabbi Chia that he brought up a brother to another brother for Leviyah. Rabbi Chia, and according to Rabbi Chia, Maishna ben delo. Why is it that a son no? Why only from a brother, yes, but not by a son? He says because he's karov etzel aviv. Achnami karov etzel achiv. One second, because of the family relationship. Just like the son is close to the father, so to the brother is close to the brother. And so the Gemara, no, he was just Masechet Ketubot, which means the brother was just saying between that he didn't have kavanah to come and to testify. He was just coming and stopping and just talking, whatever it is. So therefore, it wasn't screaming and bangs. It was stop speaking nicely. And it's speaking nicely, so then it's always going to be good. You're always going to be believed, and that's why they brought him a ma'ala. They brought him up from his brother.